So I'll start by introducing our speaker and then hand it over to Gillian. So Gillian Fish, some of you would recognize Gillian from previous webinars that she has run for us, and they've been very well received, and we always appreciate your insights, Gillian. So thank you for making time again this morning and for the preparation you've put into this. So Gillian is also the founder and director of 6 a.m. Agency, who are members of CHP Australia, which is great. Welcome, Gillian. And Gillian also will now sit on our marketing ethics subcommittee, and some of you will meet her over the coming weeks via that. So Gillian is going to talk to us today about health and nutrition marketing. Now, some of the trends and influences, obviously in the past year, speak for themselves. So Gillian will look at kind of the here and now and what it means, particularly tailored to health and nutrition marketing, but not just during this kind of COVID, lockdown, et cetera, period, but for the medium to longer term as well. So without any further ado, I will hand it over to Gillian, and I'll come back at the end of her presentation to handle any questions. So thanks, Gillian, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Brenda, David, Dion, and good morning to everyone, CHP members and attendees. I hope you're all staying well during what is really a very, very tough time, challenging times for sure, but a good time for us in the health and wellbeing industry. Before I start, I'd also like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to the elders, both past and present. Today, we're going to talk about what's happening in our industry from a marketing perspective, trends and influences which we all need to be keeping in view. For after all, we also are human beings and we are feeling exactly what it is our audiences are feeling. As aptly labeled by Professor Scott Galloway and others, COVID is an accelerator. It's accelerated us into lockdown. It's fastened the pace of business. It's made us make snap decisions overnight. And yet what it's also done is it's made us slow down. So there's this cultural tension that we're feeling as human beings across the board, which we as marketers absolutely need to be taking into account. So we're feeling inside ourselves that things will never be the same again, and likely they won't. The way that we live, the way that we work. And those are the feelings and experiences that we need to take into our brand and marketing thinking. But maybe the biggest changes that have happened are those that we feel within our homes rather than within the world at large. And these are the feelings that we need to take notice of and really grab hold of in order to be effective marketers. These are trends which we need to get on top of. And here's the word I want to put on the table, and that is the notion around grief. If you think about it, most of us are suffering from some kind of loss, some kind of grief. And in order to connect with our audiences over this time, we need to make sure that we understand where they are on this grief journey. If you have a look at grief and what some of the masters talk about, some of the experts in this space, they talk about grief being experienced over 5 different stages. So number 1 is denial with disbelief. Number 2 is anger. We see growing anger, lockdowns, being isolated. Number 3 is bargaining, saying to ourselves, well, if I could do it differently this way, or I can go for a walk later this afternoon, I can still get my work in earlier and so forth. We are bargaining around how we actually traverse this time. And then, of course, there's this deep sense of sadness. We are losing loved ones. We are disconnected from our families overseas. We can't travel. And then, of course, ultimately, there's that acceptance. And with that brings this anxiety along the way. What we're all doing now is trying to find our way to work through managing this anxiety. And this anxiety, at some level or another, is affecting our audiences. So what we want to do now is we want to talk about how that's really affecting ourselves in the deepest space where it really matters, and that's in our homes. So there was some data that was put out by Google last year, which talked about the space that we live in and how that has changed exponentially since the onset of the pandemic some 18 months ago. If we look at somebody who's living in a small apartment, originally or prior to the pandemic, they used to use part of it for domestic production. They used part of it for home rest and relaxation. They maybe had a third space that they used to go to outside of their apartments or their houses. Now what we're seeing is that is being redefined. All of the actions, including work, schooling, stress relief, a third space, is all needs to be incorporated in this tiny space, some of us bigger than others. So what we need to do as marketers is make sure that we understand, we are understanding what the heart of the challenge is for our audiences and how we relate to that and how we adapt our marketing. So the integration of this thinking has got a direct bearing on the products and services that we're consuming. So what I'd like to do now is take you through several contextual shifts, which we're seeing. They're generally macro trends which are impacting our choices. So the first is the notion around empowered well-being. We know now that even in the smaller world, a more localized world, health and well-being has never been more powerfully and front and center on the agenda. Everything that we do, we know that at 11 o'clock each day, we get an update from the Premier to tell us the status of the virus. We see headlines across the board talking about what people are doing, how they're coping with the virus, how they're coping with lockdown and isolation. So front and center is that thinking around empowered well-being. And it is that which we need to keep in view in an industry which is lucky to have the opportunity to help our audiences. But here's the thing, we need to keep in view that we need to be talking about connection, about support, rather than just consumption, rather than just pushing our products. Secondly, we see the notion around keeping things local. And what does that mean? Firstly, we have been drawn into the insides of our homes, small microcosms and micro universes that we now live in. But we also are generally living more locally in our local areas. Likely, there are more people now who know about the cafe on the corner that will sell a takeaway coffee than those that they used to get every single day in the city when they go to work. We know that with lockdowns of borders, we can see that produce is becoming more localized because produce can't go from state to state. And there are a number of effects. We're even seeing in some of our local restaurants and cafes that they're selling eggs, milk, and a few things to help people get through this time. So local is absolutely key. Then we look at the context, the shifting context about slowing down. People need to slow down. They are desperate to slow down, to stop and to think about what all of this has, the effect on their homes, their lives, etc. We see the advent of slow cooking. We see the advent of slow movies. We see the acceleration of yoga classes online and so forth. So all of these things which are coping mechanisms to help us get through this time. Then importantly, absolutely critically, consumers now are seeking value. We need to cut to the chase. They need to be able to see in a product that they are actually going to get value. In the experience that they have, if they're going online, they want to see that they're getting value, and even value exchange between friends. If friends are connecting now, a big trend to connect on a Saturday at 5 o'clock with friends that we're disconnected from, they want to seek value, they want to be uplifted. And that is very important for us to keep in view as brand holders. Importantly as well, and linked to that, is the importance of making meaning. And that's really about purpose. And we'll talk about it a little bit later in a notion around essentialism. But everything that we do needs to have meaning and purpose. We need to cut all the superfluous things and activities in our lives. And last but not least, uncertainty reigns. And what does that mean for us? We are making shorter, more impactful decisions. What are we going to eat over the next few weeks? Next week, when we're planning for our dinners, while we are trying to couple work, play, homeschooling together. That's why we're seeing the proliferation of all wonderful meal kits, meal deliveries, short snackable activities and experiences that are keeping us engaged, keeping us uplifted, but give us the flexibility to keep on pivoting as we need to be. So these are the contextual shifts at large. What I'm now going to do is very quickly show you the Google searches and the evolution in Google search between 2019 and 2020. And we can see that in some cases, there's been a tenfold increase in searches around beauty and personal care. Now, interestingly enough, we've seen research that has come out of Minnesota that has actually shown that 18 to 24-year-olds are consuming 45% more beauty products because they are finding that they are enjoying the rituals which keep them grounded, helps to reduce stress and so forth. So we're also seeing, as we did interestingly in wartime many decades ago, is people buying those one-off lipstick or products which are going to help uplift them during this time. Of course, the search for health has been absolutely accelerated, but what we're seeing now is that we are getting search from more informed consumers who are seeking validated health counsel. They've moved from a learning phase to one of action. So we need to elevate the information that we share in order to empower them and help them through this time. Hobbies and leisure as well are increasing dramatically. We're seeing a proliferation of board games and things to do at home, scrapbooking, all sorts of things that we see parents doing with children and so forth. So largely we can see that these trends are being played out in the searches that we find on Google. So what does that mean for us now? That means that what we need to do is we need to find new ways to get through this time. And, excuse me. We need to look at this as lockdown 2.0 for us as marketing professionals. So the first thing that I'd like to land is we're talking about it as the health economy. And what does that mean? The health economy means that front and center, not only in the health and well-being industry, but across all sectors, be it finance, education, everything is touched. Every sector now needs to have a lens of health and well-being through that. Why? Because the way our audiences are relating to brands has shifted forever. And what they're looking for is they're looking for us to look at their lives through their lens and then adapt that into all the actions that we are taking. So we look at many winning campaigns, interestingly enough, at Cannes Lions recently, only a couple of weeks ago, were not in the health category, did not come from health and well-being brands. They came from FMCG, who are adapting that into their work. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we deliver brand value to the customer by solving real world problems that have that health lens, by entertaining, by creating special experiences, creating new conversations around topics that customers care about. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through 10 top trends that we believe as an agency and we've seen out there we need to take into account. And the first and the most critical is this. We have to evolve from B2C, business to consumer, to business to humans. And what does that mean? And where does it come from? In our view, it is a mistake to continue to think of our audience as consumers. They are not. We need to think about them as whole human beings. And how did that come about? That came about generally is from working from home, where the lines became blurred between work and play. Homeschooling has now further accelerated that blurring. And us as business owners and as brand holders, we now need to look under the hood of what's happening at home without prying, of course, but understanding, are our people comfortable? What is their domestic situation? Are there issues relating perhaps to relationships? What's happening with their finances? And because of that, we then have better insight into them as human beings, and we can therefore make better, deeper, richer, informed decisions, content and communications in order to connect with them during this time with real value and with relevance. We need to connect over our vulnerabilities more than just how are you? We need to say, how are you really? And dig a little bit deeper. So that's what we are calling the number one shift in the trend that we're seeing globally is evolving from B2C to B2H. So what does that mean for brands? We need to ask the questions. We need to say to ourselves, we need to evolve from a strategy to a human journey. We need to understand the whole person, work and home life. We need to make the narrative compelling and deep. It needs to be grittier. We need to embrace emotional, psychological, and physical needs. We cannot ignore what a millennial mother is doing with a young baby and a toddler working from home. She might have financial problems and so forth. We've got to dig deeper and connect deeper. And we need to let human needs really lead product innovation. What is it that we can produce when we are innovating for the next year ahead in order to really support better and show that the brand cares beyond its core product? We need to help those in need as well. We need to review through the lens of changing context, culturally sensitive issues. How are different people living? There's some people that are living with 3 or 4 generations in one home. How does that affect what they need? We need to consider helping essential workers. What are we doing in our partnerships? What are we doing in our CSR? How are we helping others? And essentially and importantly, we need to bring to life emotional storytelling versus emotional or product story yelling. That is the key. Here are some examples of brands that are doing it well. Some of them we've seen through Khan's lines. Dreams Inc., the Japanese soap manufacturer, launched the We Are Viruses project in cooperation with Dreams Inc. in an effort to encourage young children to understand the importance of washing hands during the COVID era. A great animated series of videos that said, we understand you, we're going to connect, we're going to help educate you on this journey, but we're going to bring your children along. So have a look at that video if you can find it online. Then there's another beautiful video that I'd like to share with you by Teva Pharmaceuticals. So Teva Pharmaceuticals in their consumer division have a hairspray campaign, hairspray product in a campaign that they brought to life of an older man who wanted to show the real love he had for his wife who's ailing. And I will share with you this video. A beautiful example of something that is really emotionally connected. It deals with real issues of loneliness, of isolation, of loss, of ailing people with health issues. So theme number 2, which is key, is mental well-being matters. And we know that for everyone and everything. I think in every boardroom, the discussion is, how are our people? And our people are our audiences. Let's face it, we're living in a coping economy at the moment, and one which requires the building of confidence and trust, which has been eroded during these terribly volatile times of disruption. I'm sure you know the figures. Last year, there were around 3,300 suicides in Australia, and likely that is going to grow. But here's the thing, between people who are so desperate at level 1 and those who are elated and actually feel that this time has given them an opportunity to shine, there is a middle band, a very broad middle band of Australians, and likely in most countries, who are feeling and experiencing ongoing low-level anxiety, unease, dis-ease, stress that impacts them daily. And that is the band of people that we need to be looking at every day. It's that middle band. An example of both B2C and the well-being point of view and category is that of nappies. No one who's dealing with a baby is in a world of smiley little bears and happiness, right? We're all in lockdown, or most of us are in lockdown, and we're suffering the challenges. We've got a beautiful baby we love. There's this joy and elation, but there are all the challenges of not enough sleep and so forth. So actually, that time can sometime, if we don't have enough help, be excruciating and exhausting. So nappy brands maybe should consider that there's pain involved in young babies. They need to acknowledge how hard it is for parents. And then once they get that feel and they are able to connect with mothers or parents, guardians, and so forth, then that real whole person experience and relationship will come to the fore, and they will help them trust the brand, and they will let the brand be in their life in a deeper way. So in terms of mental well-being, it's absolutely critical for us to understand, I guess, where we are on that grief journey or on the journey of day-to-day life. And yes, there are some people who are not feeling grief, but the large part of it, we have that niggling dis-ease that we need to keep in view. So what are the impacts for brands? Some of the questions that we need to ask: what is the mental well-being status of our audiences? Where are they on this, what we call the grief journey? What do our audiences care about? What do they need? What do they want? What do they desire? What are their hopes? But importantly, how can we as brands really help them during this time? We need to humanize our communications, dial down the salesy content, connect with current challenges. This morning, I had a look at a couple of the social media posts in our industry. Whilst they are absolutely beautiful and in sync and in line creatively with what the brand stands for, etc., is just lacking a little bit of emotion in some of them. We need to maybe pivot at this time and become more real and understand what is facing them. Are we being transparent, clear, and authentic? Because remember, that is what builds trust. Are we adding value to their lives? Or are we just provoking anxiety? If we're looking at a beautiful picture of somebody, dreaming about a holiday, yes, let's do that. But is it anxiety provoking? Let's make sure that we have is relevant for the time. And yes, we do need to provide hope. Is our message audience-centric or self-promotional marketing? Are we saying to ourselves, as Tiva did, we're actually talking about the audience and the challenges that are facing them, or the problem that we need to unpack, or we're just pushing our product? Is it storytelling or story yelling, as I said earlier? Have we achieved empathy coupled with science? Remember, we're in an industry which has proof points which are brilliant to help people build that trust and belief in us. And can we partner with NFPs who are doing it tough at this time and help them and get a broader story out there? So this is just the starting point of how we deal with mental well-being in this time. The third trend and theme that we're seeing is that something called recuperative living. You're right, we don't have time. We can't take long holidays. We can't take long lunches. We don't even have times for long calls. Yes, on weekends when there's peace and quiet, but not during the week. So similarly, bite-sized self-care is on the agenda. We may want to call it restoration in a can. Routine is recuperative, and brands should think about how we bring those routines or fit into the routines of our audiences so that we can have relevance and help them along the way. So daily, our focus needs to be on two things. Essentially, how do we support with mental well-being? And of course, how do we support immunity? In terms of mental well-being, it may be how do we help our mothers and our parents cope with homeschooling? Or how do we help our children, the children of those parents, with the low-level anxiety? How do we help our audiences become stronger? So what are the impact for brands? As I said earlier, routine is recuperative. Find ways to slip into that effortlessly. What do our products do? What are the services that we have? What are the ideas that we have that can really fit part of that day-to-day ritual? Family rituals have been rekindled, eating together and connected edutainment. How do we infuse ourselves in that? Recuperative content, exercise, mindfulness. Let's embrace influencers and maybe some KOLs to come and give some courses and classes to validate and bring that upliftment and that empowerment to our people and our audiences. Supportive content. Then we're talking about digital intimacy to connect with those who are disconnected. How do we create groups that people can join so that they are less disconnected? There are many, many people who are living on their own. There are many people who've got family who are overseas, so they are seeking that connection. We look at food, beverage, health, entertainment, deliveries with partnerships. Let us look at Menulog. Let us look at any of the Marley Spoons and those to see as health brands how we can infuse and sit alongside our nutritional partners for growth hacking and actually to broaden our reach. Let's look at AI and AR tools to support recuperation. And importantly, let's look at the future. Let's provide hope and plan for out-of-lockdown celebrations. Might we have a pop-up? Of course, social distance to support that recuperation and influences, as I said before. So let's have a look now at a couple of examples. Nike did a great thing. What they did was recently is they developed a series of videos showing how their roster of athlete endorsers are staying active during this time. And what they did was they invited people to join the Nike Training Club for free so people could access workouts and training tips from home. Great, simple idea, very quick content to get to produce and then to share through multiple channels. Theme number 4, essentialism, which is very, very dear to our heart in our agency. Less has never been more. And what is essentialism? Essentially, ironically, we say that it's about paring back to only what is essential for our audiences. There are 3 things, and we came across this notion when I was writing my book, Resilience, in the early stages of COVID last year. I interviewed a Dr. Anish Bajaj, and he said to me, Jill, this is time to pare back. There are 3 questions that we need to ask. How do we spend our time? Is it spent wisely, and can we pare back? Busy is a thing of the past. Secondly is, who do we spend our time with? Are we spending time with people who uplift us, who fill us up, who fulfill us in business and in play? And what do we consume? And this is where it affects us importantly. What do we need to do that is essential to nourish ourselves, to empower us, to support our mental health and well-being? Are we in a comfortable space in our homes? And what is it, and how are we using products, etc., to help build that space? Are we focusing on what is essential? And I guess we can say the answer to sanity is less, right? So what is the impacts for brands? We've got to ask ourselves, what distinctive brand advantages do we have to create essential value? I'll use a non-health and well-being example. I'll use IKEA, that's got great products that can very quickly turn a space into a sanctuary, low cost, easy to put together, easy to receive by delivery. So there's a great example, is what is it that is distinctive that can help bring this essential value? We need to reimagine our strategies to deliver that through essentialist, relevant communications. Keep it simple unless we're informing and empowering. Carefully consider our marketing for overload of time, budget, or stress. Is there any way that we can pare back so we can cut to the chase and be razor focused on what we're trying to achieve for our audiences? Choose less is more for SKUs. Can we take a range of 25 SKUs and maybe cut it down to 10 or 20? How do we make the user experience less complicated and less anxiety provoking? Take a fresh look at our social playbook. Is it too conventional? Do we need to cut it down? Do we need to cut down the number of posts but dial up the connection? We need to be agile in adapting communications to changing circumstance. Is our narrative that we prepared in social media 5 or 6 weeks ago relevant for now? Or do we need to dial up and change? Does it deliver an essential and comforting message? And we need to use smart and lean digital experiences to ensure minimum time is spent. So one of the case studies that I'd like to just quickly share with you is getting essential and simplifying of what the team at BioOil did many years ago when it was acquired from scientist Bayer. There were 2 brothers, I understand, who acquired it, sold it off, all of the developers' other products, and just kept the dry skin product. And that became the hero. And upon discovering customer testimonials, the brothers found that BioOil's fans were using it for more than just dryness. They were finding success in treating scars, stretch marks, and hyperpigmentation too. So they packaged it up as a problem solver, not just a topical treatment. And there you have it, a broad range, cut down just to 1 product SKU. Might have evolved a little bit now, and then it became a global phenomenon. So a great understanding, a great point of view on how you can cut back to become more lean in your communication and product offering. So number 5 is building trust over time. And trust, as we know, without trust in any brand, any business, it doesn't matter if it's service or product, is absolutely key. So when we talk about trust, we need to talk about a trust multiplier. What can we do now to accelerate and build trust? So we need to start, first of all, in our own backyards. Are we doing the right thing for our own people and our planet? Because if we aren't doing the right thing for our own people, we surely can't go out there to our audiences to support us. We need to build confidence in every action, from labeling to digital and on-shelf, absolutely everywhere. We need to make sure that we build confidence, that we give enough value and people trust us. That means we've got to lead with full transparency at all times. If we're not getting it right, we've got to say so. If our deliveries are late, we've got to say, we have a problem with our deliveries, but hold on, we will be there and we're making another plan. We've got to communicate in real time with authenticity, and we've got to redefine our communications as required. We've got to make sure that we combine facts, though, always with empathy. So we can't yell at, we've got to communicate with to build that trust. We've got to make sure that we embrace, again, that agility and flexibility to engender audience confidence. Because if we just keep on with our de rigueur narrative that we haven't changed for weeks and months, and we don't turn things around, we are going to start to erode that trust. We also need to understand the cost to confidence ratio to ensure that the brand shows true value. And what does that mean? That means that we shouldn't just be driving for sales. We've got to add value. It's not necessarily now about discounting. It's about adding value that will actually build trust. And our audience say, these people, this brand is with us. And last but not least is shareable content is social currency. Now more than ever, if people start sharing, it shows trust. So just one or two ideas about how to build trust. Thought leadership is key to building brand leadership and trust by sharing a particular point of view. And there are a number of assets that can be used. I shamelessly say this is one of the assets that we've created in our agency and we use regularly. It's a white paper to build authority, leadership, and trust during this time. And there are multiple topics that one can use and grab onto in the health and wellbeing industry to put out there, followed by webinars and so forth. Cigna, I'm sure you know the pharmaceutical brand, with COVID and lockdown driving unprecedented levels of stress, they partnered with scientists and key opinion leaders to show people how to understand what stress does to their body and how they can measure it, what they can do to help alleviate it. So they created a series of videos, one of which I'll quickly show you, and then online quizzes and tools to help people during this time.
Some stress is good for us, but why, when it builds up, do we just live with it? Now we can see stress differently. Partnering with doctors, technologists, and artists, Cigna is visualizing what stress is actually doing to our bodies. Any of us can learn to take control of stress, and making a plan is an effective way to start. Use Cigna's tools to visualize how stress is affecting your body and mind, and find out more about taking control today.
A great use of creative educational content driven then to the website for further application with and interaction with tools that start to measure and help and support and importantly empower. Theme number 6, cocooning is back. And for those of us who are baby boomers and a little bit older, many of us will remember Faith Popcorn, the future predictor guru, the trend guru from the 80s. She spoke about cocooning then, which when she detected a deep shift in the way people were living their lives. And really it's defined as moving away from the heady days of partying, of overstimulation, and the thrill of the 70s at the time to an impending trend of the need to protect ourselves from harsh, unpredictable realities of the outside world. Perhaps she was a predictor of what was to come further down the line. So through that time now, we are seeing people starting to cocoon. Our homes are really where our place is that is safest, where we are with our people, with our pets, with our families. And drivers of household cocooning wellness trends has been accelerated by millennials as well, desire for experience and self-improvement enabled by easier internet access and tech. So what health challenges are we facing during these times, and what can we do as brand marketers within those spaces to help our audiences overcome them. Let's look at categories like stress and anxiety. We're seeing that with ingredients coming through strongly, ashwagandha, kava, and others in the complementary medicine industry. Sleeplessness, magnesium has risen to the fore. Weight gain, we're seeing brands, technology brands with apps that are helping us become more active, even in our smaller spaces, or smaller fitness gears and tools that we can use in our homes. Loneliness, very, very big, where we are connecting via tech, digital, but also helping our older seniors by making sure that they are on this journey, not alone. And then, of course, there's financial stress and joblessness. We're seeing the talk about JobKeeper again today. So if we look at those categories, how do we then as brands tap into that? I always use the example of an energy company, which has been providing energy for decades to our audiences. They too have always had permission to be in the home with the audiences. So how can they help them with supportive content so we can see and make sure that we are giving value and really connecting at a deeper level to this time? Everyone has been told to self-isolate, those who've had close connections, and that means a return en masse to this idea around cocooning. So what is the impact for homes? Health at home will boom. So what are we as an industry doing to really tap into that from a product innovation perspective, from a comms perspective, and from a partnership perspective? We need to connect with our audiences to understand their home needs. How have their spaces become smaller? Where do they live? What spaces do they live in? Are they big? Are they small? How many people are with them? We need to shift our delivery and marketing channels to focus on that home experience. How effective are we? How smart are we with that? If we look at one of the up-and-coming supplement brands, Vitable, which has got an online health checker, it's all done online, personalized prescription, and then delivered from digital to door. They're making a huge impact in the industry and growing at a very fast rate. They've got it right. They understand their audience. We've got to drive product innovation as well that supports home use. Content should consider reworked places to live, work, and play. And importantly now, SEO and SEM needs to tap into those home well-being trends. Let us use PR content to help us with search as well. We should leverage existing well-being focused digital tech for amplification. There's Strava and many others that we can partner with. Partner home delivering brands, be it Menulog, be it Deliveroo, to grow that audience and reach. What about a partnership with Marley Spoon or one of those, which I've mentioned before? And then, of course, consider above the line for mass reach and results, because people are more increasingly sitting in front of screens. I've got a non-health and well-being, a FMCG example of something that I thought was great is looking at IKEA. IKEA Israel used the iconic instruction design to connect with the audience with relevance now. During a time of need, right? They said it's difficult going into isolation and lockdown. So they came up with this fun and shareable piece of content. All you need is keys, a lock, and 100 rolls of toilet paper. A bit of fun there as well. PetX, a great example. The fundraising group, Fundraising Everywhere, came up with an idea for PetX because they know to mirror TEDx, they know that people love sharing information with their pets and sharing content and so forth, inspirational ideas. So what they did was they launched this website and used it as a fundraising opportunity. Our pet owners share video content and they can fundraise at the same time. Great idea, culturally relevant and really very smart. Number 7 is nostalgia. We've called it as a starting point, nostalgia, because we all know, I'm sure there's every single one of us has gone back to baking or creating something that our grandmothers did. In terms of nostalgia, what does that mean? Nostalgia marketing means we are bringing back the past. People love connecting with old memories. It's something that is recognizable. It makes us feel safe. Familiarity is great during this time. So why not infuse nostalgia in product packaging and promotion? Why not look back, particularly for the longer standing brands with a deep heritage, at what we used to do before? Bring up a compilation of our old ads, which are recognizable. Maybe get influencers to revive vintage rituals. Get them to bake banana bread with your audiences and so forth. get them to look at old-fashioned well-being rituals. And brands would reignite those heritage product offerings as well, those which are recognizable. Reignite iconic brand icons, and I'll show you an example, an imagery to reignite passion. Draw on ancient cultures which are influencing well-being products. Again, we look at Ayurvedic culture and rituals, ingredients that are used, bring those back and create that, infuse that in our storytelling, and make sure that we infuse vintage activities into brand experiences. If you look around the globe at multiple brands, they are bringing these vintage experiences back. You look at Coca-Cola, all of the big brands. So we've got the example here of Heinz with the sales of jigsaw puzzles soaring. We know that people are looking at gamification in old-fashioned ways, board games and old-fashioned games. Heinz saw an opportunity to engage with this trend and reinforce the heritage of their packaging. So very easy to do. They created the ketchup puzzle and they had a giveaway promotion and they promoted it through all their social. Number 8, and after this, we've got 2 more to go. So we're getting to the home stretch now. One of the top themes that we look at, importantly, is food as medicine. And what is it about food as medicine? We know in the health industry that food is very, very powerful for us. Very, very powerful for us. And it impacts how we live and work and traverse this time with immunity. Prevention is better than cure. So let us look at how it impacts the brands and how we infuse it into what we're doing. Product innovation for long-term engagement is critical versus short-term fad sales. Look at that which is going to truly help us on the journey from a healthcare perspective. What are the ingredients that are going to be here to stay? Let's look at the evolution. For example, I'll talk about it in plant-based evolution, but let's look at omegas that are key. Let's look at mitochondrial energy, which is helping us now counter that fatigue which comes with stress, lack of sleep, respiratory issues. Let's also look at product labeling, which is paramount to verify efficacy at point of sale. Let's use QR codes. We're now all used to that to provide deeper reason to believe at the point of purchase. Importantly, for food as medicine, let's engage key opinion leaders to validate, to bring proof points, to build trust and authority. Earned builds credibility in times of uncertainty with food as medicine. So let us get third-party endorsement for our stories. Create dynamic content to explain mode of action, empower our audiences to make sure that they understand why we're saying broccoli might be healthy or curcumin or whatever the ingredient is. And gamified assets are very good to encourage education. For example, gut health board games. A very quick example of a mode of action video, which is now becoming de rigueur for audiences, not only HCP, not only academia, but consumers. Upbeat, creative in a way that explains. Here's a 30-second mode of action we've created. So what we're doing with this kind of content is we're making sure that we can educate and inform. We can make it a little bit more consumer-centric or HCP-centric, whatever we are looking at. It really works well and gets mass engagement. What we'll then do is look at an example of a board game for gut health, microbiome magic. How do we teach our children from a very young age to eat well, and that the gut microbiome is so influential when it comes to building immune health? So there are multiple ways of bringing food as medicine to life in snackable, enjoyable ways that inform and enhance. Number 9 is plant more, and I'm going to work through this very, very quickly. This is one of the biggest themes that we're seeing across the board, is how do we infuse more plant-based products, ingredients, and packaging in our businesses and our brands. We cannot ignore this trend that is accelerating very fast. So we need to seek plant-based replacements for animal products, plant-based omegas, Healthy is a major consumer expectation of these products. We can add fiber, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, which can future-proof us. We need to build the nutrition of dairy back into dairy alternatives to avoid creating nutrient gaps in our diets, in our supplementation. And not all plant proteins are equal. We need to consider protein quality in formulations and so forth. But last but not least, we need to make sure that we review our packaging strategies. We need to seek plant-based options that are biodegradable or compostable. And an example that I'm going to show you now, and coming up in the last theme, is reusable everything, sustainable too. And that ultimately is one of the biggest trends and the challenges facing every single one of our brands. We are all trying to see how we can do better, not only for the planet, for people as well. And our commitment to brands that reduce carbon footprint and save our planet from destruction is absolutely key. We only have to look at the massive floods this week in Europe to realize that the effects of climate change are reaching our modern cities. It's not just outlying in areas, and we're no longer confined to the rising waters on coastlines. So consumers are turning in droves to recycling, reusing, composting, and we need to make sure that we drive that innovation. So there are a number of brands that are doing it very well. We use the example of Burt's Bees, many of you would know that, the beauty brand that's committed to zero waste to landfill in its manufacturing processes. Take Australia's own Vitable, which I mentioned before, the digital wellness brand, which is 100% compostable packaging for its vitamin delivery, which is absolutely outstanding, revolutionizing what's happening in the industry. We're looking at the women's health category, reusable menstrual cups or period underwear. We see plastic-free toiletries and pet care products. The list is too large to name. Here's a picture in front of us of running shoes. There are multiple brands now, Adidas, Allbirds, who are bringing to market 100% recycled materials to create their products. Louis Vuitton, Moet and Hennessy Innovation Awards recently awarded Ipley, a brand which designs and produces reusable packaging. It's gone all the way to the top couture companies, as well as offering a service allowing consumers to easily post the packaging back to the sorting centers everywhere in major cities in Europe. So the innovation in that regard is huge. So what is the impact? We need to define and commit to sustainability as part of our brand purpose, and we can't ignore it anymore. Registering for the likes of TerraCycle or any of those other organizations, consider how we can do that. B Corp accreditation is now becoming de rigueur, even across retail brands, to meet the UN sustainability goals, not only for planet, for people and how we treat our people. We need to drive reusable messaging across earned, and paid. There are many consumers who still don't really know how to do that best, where to go, where to recycle, how to recycle. Use hemp, sugarcane, etc. for compostable packaging. Supplier partnerships committed to best practice, including people. Seek out great partners, leverage of those partnerships, go into market together. Look at new ways of packaging. Make sure that our products are more friendly and more sustainable, and enter awards to drive that profile and authority. Here is an example of Vitable, which I've mentioned before, 100% recyclable, compostable, which is an outstanding sustainable proposition, which the industry is seeing moving forward. So in summary, here they are, the top 10. Definitely we need to evolve from B2C to business to human. We need to infuse mental well-being in absolutely everything that we do. Consider that we are looking and living now from a health and well-being perspective in a recuperative state. Essentialism, pair back to those three essential matters. Number one is, what do we spend our time on? What do we spend our money with on consuming? And that affects us. And who do we spend time with? Make sure that trust is on the agenda. Understand how you are reaching your audiences in a cocooning mindset. Nostalgia, think about that creatively. How do we get that back on the agenda? Food is medicine. It's imperative that we have proof points in whatever we put out to market. and we know and we educate and inform our consumers, our audiences, pardon me, I shouldn't have said consumers, our audiences in how to maintain and build optimal well-being through strong immune systems. Look at the plant trend, and last but not least, reusable everything and sustainable. So very quickly, what I'd like to do is show you the way that we look at it from a 6 a.m. perspective. So a tool that we have that's called the 3D way. So what we do is, this is inspired by the thinking of an English marketing author called David Trott, and we call it the predatory approach. It's a series of pointy commercial questions we ask our customers to get really clear on the source of our business. So we look at consumer, we look at our competitors, and we look at the brand and audiences. And we have what we call a predatory start. The first question that we ask ourselves is, from a market growth perspective, are we taking market growth or share? Are we looking at new or existing users? And are we trying to build product, or are we building brand overall? What we then do is we take the ideas around relevance within those points, the differentiators and the deliverables, and we come up with our journey map. And that journey map is our channel. And within that, we are able to very carefully get to what we look at, the bull's eye, which looks at the center, sits in the center of this trifecta. And we are able to very quickly and carefully identify what we've got to focus on to be essential and clear to achieve our goals. This is obviously a very quick overview of this tool. Happy to give you an overview one-on-one or share more information. I'm aware we're coming to the end of our time now, and I want to thank you all for your time and for tuning in. I did update this deck this morning with this last slide. This, as I was coming, I'm sitting in my office now, as you can see, on my own. This post came up on my social media this morning from Designs for Health. I know it's a practitioner supplement brand, but it made me smile. Today, they didn't have any products on the product narrative on their social. The first thing is that they said was, we're here to support you. And I said to myself, these guys are understanding the pain of what people are going through, practitioners and patients alike. Slow delivery in a busy time, but wanting to know that we're out there. So what I say to you is, be well, stay strong, and thank you all for your time. And if anyone's got any questions, I'd like to hand back to Brenda. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. I'm exhausted. Thinking about all those questions you posed. Fantastic. Really, really wonderful content. Thank you so much, Gillian. We do have a few minutes left. And like I said, if we don't cover all the questions, Gillian is happy to handle them offline. But a couple that have been sent through, one from Isaac. Can you talk a bit more about achieved empathy coupled with science?
Yes, thank you very much. I think the first thing is that we're in the health and well-being industry. We're on consumer health products and very strictly fit within the guidelines of TGA. So what we've got to do is, number one, is we've always got to verify the proof that the claims that we're making around our products, and that is verified with science. But what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that when we package it and share it out with our audiences, particularly during this time, it has empathy bundled around it so that it is delivered in a way which is not story yelling, just talking, this is us and we are these scientific proof points. But first and foremost, we understand you, we understand your needs, we are empathetic with our audience, and then we feed in the science. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Gillian. I have so many questions in my head. Well, we're waiting for others to come through. Someone had texted through, how do we balance this whole product sell versus emotion? I loved your concept of storytelling versus story yelling. So one could be seen as gratuitous, opportunistic, etc. And especially given essentialism talks about paring back to what's really, really important. So how do you marry the whole thing? How do you address what you're talking about, the storytelling, without seeming opportunistic in this time? Well, how do you strike that balance, I guess?
I think from our perspective, it's really firstly getting to understand what the audience is going through authentically. Let us not just talk about what it is that we think matters, reach out to the audience, understand, take a poll, ask some questions and find out, and then develop the strategy from there. And what we've got to do, and I think the Tiva, the group, really got to the heart of that. They're a hairdressing brand with hairspray, but what they did was they dug deeper to what is happening, to what matters to people now. There are lots of people who are unwell. There are lots of people who are ailing, and there are lots of carers and loved ones who want to help but feel helpless. And they really got to the heart of what matters. And then they went out with a beautiful, gentle, empathetic story, which surely was going to connect with multiple audiences across multiple age groups. Sorry, you're on mute. Brenda, you're on mute.
You'd think after a year and a half you would learn about this. Anyway, sorry. From Catherine, I've seen some other trends around the emergence of a consumer group that are all about positivity. Where do you see this playing in the top 10 trends?
Absolutely. There needs to be positivity, and we call it hope. And it's how do we very, very gently position hope as a possibility and positivity. What we don't want to be doing, and we still see on some Instagram pages now, if you look through the industry, it's all beautiful pictures and nothing has changed. We need to say, we need to show people, empower them, and with that will come hope and possibility and positivity, but it's got to be delivered in a way that is authentic and relevant to now.
Okay, and what about lightheartedness? Does that play a role in that, or?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it that we do need lightheartedness through this time. But again, it's got to be relevant and it's got to be authentic. You know, we saw what IKEA did. They had the diagram, one keyhole, and then 100 rolls of toilet paper, right? That's lighthearted, but it's still relevant and it's still informative and it still says we need to follow the guidelines.
Okay, great. One last question before we have to turn off. You described lots of shifts. There's so much meat in there to think about. But if you had to pick one, just from a personal standpoint, that you think is, you know, maybe fairly challenging, but probably has the highest impact in all of those trends and things you talked about, is one near and dear to your heart?
Great question. I think it is number one, Brenda, and it is evolving from business to consumer to business to human, because what that does is it encompasses all the other themes. I see it in my own business. I need to now have a very much deeper understanding of my team who is working off site. And there are multiple different scenarios going on. People on their own, people living with children, multiple scenarios. And if we can understand that we need to look at our people, at our audiences as whole human beings, then we're going to ask multiple questions. What is it that they need now? What is it that they want now? What is relevant? What do we not want to do? And what do we want to achieve in the medium to long term?
Great, thank you. Well, listen, I have so many other things I'd love to ask right now, but time's come to an end for this session. But thank you so much, Gillian. You always give us such good, meaty food for thought. And when I said I was exhausted earlier, I'm exhausted in a very stimulated way, lots to think about. So thank you so much. We will be sending out as I said, the slides from Gillian and the recording and her contact details if you have further questions or want to contact Gillian to talk further about anything that she's presented today. So thank you so much. And before we close off, I do want to give a little pitch for the Diamond Awards. We need a little bit of fun and lightheartedness this year in the industry. So we are aiming and hoping for a face-to-face event for all of us to join in on the 18th of November. So please register your intent to enter the Diamond Awards. Registrations close this week, so you've got some time left. David Lowe can answer any questions if you want to email him on that. So again, thank you, Gillian. Really appreciate your time and appreciate everyone in the audience who's joined us today. So stay well and take care all.
Thank you, Brenda.
Mm.